So you just have to find your why, the purpose of like, what do you really, and it's the simple answer of like, what do you enjoy doing overall? Doesn't mean you have to enjoy it all the time. There are sometimes bad days, sometimes good days, but overall, when you come back, you're like, oh, I really, really love to do this. And I can see myself doing this for a very long time or the rest of your life.
A very warm welcome to Mindset Win today with Phil Wizard, the Wizard of Breaking, who will hopefully take us into his world today and teach us not only all we need to know about his craft, but about his mindset as well. Phil, it's very exciting and incredible to have you. Are you ready for the episode?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for having me, Lisa. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, well, then let's see. Breakdance obviously is this very exciting sport, this very exciting discipline that, you know, combines so many different factors. How did you first get in touch with the whole sport?
Yeah, breaking for me was introduced when I was around 11 years old. I saw it for the very first time in my city, Vancouver, BC, Canada. There was a local crew called the Now or Never crew, and they were performing on the street in front of the art gallery, which is a very common busking spot for us in the city. And I'm sure I maybe had seen breaking before, like on TV or in videos, but this was my first time seeing it live. And I just remember being blown away. Like, they were doing all of these crazy moves. They were spinning on their heads. They were flipping. And at the time, I was a young kid, and I remember just seeing it, my mind being blown and being like, that's so cool. I could totally impress people if I do that. I feel like I can get girls if I do that. Like, that was the initial
nice. Most
draw,
important thing.
Like, exactly, right? At the time, anyways, for an 11-year-old kid, I was like, oh, this is so cool. I feel like people will think I'm cool if I do this. So that's what initially piqued my interest. And then later on, I was in elementary school at the time in grade 7, right before graduating. In my school, they do like a dance class at the very end of the year, and one of the instructors that they brought in was a hip-hop teacher. So they were teaching us like hip-hop choreography, but I went up to him and asked, like, do you teach any breaking? I saw breaking on the street, I'd like to learn. And he actually happened to be in the same crew that was performing on the street that day. His name was Jarek, and he gave me a card, and I just started taking classes and just never stopped after that.
Yeah, I guess. And you became one of the most talented or most skilled breakers that we have at this very moment.
Thank you.
coming back to those beginnings, really. How did it make you feel to move your body like that during the first lessons that you took?
Yeah, I think for me, breaking in the beginning is very difficult. And I know that from obviously personal experience, but from teaching a lot too. For a lot of kids, it's hard to pick up. It's different than a lot of other dance styles, where the physical challenge and like body coordination and stuff is very, very difficult to be able to hold yourself and your body weight up. But I remember just loving that challenge. First of all, the physical difficulty of it. And then later on, when I started breaking a little bit more and I started learning the foundation, you quickly start to work on your own skills and developing your own skills. And I think I fell in love with, and what continues, my love for it continues today, is because of the combination of physical difficulty, but the creative difficulty as well. There's a huge emphasis on style and creating your own style right from an early point. I remember people telling me right away, like, you will learn the foundation, we'll teach you the beginnings, but it's all about making your own style, making your own movements, coming up with your own way to approach this dance. And so the combination of the two, I think, is what really, really pushed me and kind of kept me going in it.
So how do you balance these two components, the art, the creativity, and the physicality of it? How do you merge the two to, you know, get the best possible creation out there?
Yeah, we have a very common saying within the world of breaking, which is think like an artist and train like an athlete. And that's something that I live by, I think, from pretty early on. I was always super into breaking in general, but I wanted, from an early point, I recognized that I want to do this for as long as I possibly could. So from an early point, like, I was conditioning, I was working out with a personal trainer. Now with breaking is going, there's a lot of people like that, working with a personal trainer, working on their conditioning. But I remember when I was starting, it wasn't as prominent. But I think from an early point, I was really interested in. I would often get, and very common injuries for breakers are wrist injuries, knee injuries, shoulder injuries, a lot of wear and tear from overuse. And I remember looking up up, okay, when my wrist started to hurt, what is another field or sport or discipline where they use their wrists a lot? And so, for example, I saw gymnastics, and I would look up, okay, gymnastics, like wrist strengthening routines, and then I would follow that. And then in about around 2017 is when I met a personal trainer that I still train with today. His name is Paul Chung. He's a wonderful trainer, and I started training with him. And so that was the physical side for me, to condition myself and kind of make myself the best that I could. And then creatively, it's in the studio every day. It's practicing, it's listening to different music, it's finding inspiration in different things. The physical side is in training, is in studio. The creative element kind of never turns off for me. Like, I'm always thinking about breaking. I'm always finding inspiration in different things. Sometimes I'll be going on like a walk, and if I'm with my buddies or if I'm with some family members, like sometimes people will see me zone out because like in my head an idea popped out, and then I'm kind of playing the idea in my head, and then I'm like, okay, tomorrow at practice or tonight or whatever, I'll go try that idea. So the creative element never really shuts off. And I think for us anyways, like we are going to the world of sports now, but for us, breaking has always been an art and a culture first. And so for me, I think of it in the lens of an artist, of like everything I do in life, whether it's the way I feel, whether it's the books I read, whether it's the music that I listen to, of course, as it is a dance, those all play a role in the creative process. And then the physicality is just working on the physicality of it in the gym as well as in the studio when I'm actually dancing.
Yeah, man, I can't really wrap my head around think like an artist. Like the moment you said it, I was like stuck with it. What does it even mean? I mean, you shared a couple of the routines or thoughts you have, but what does that mean? Because I feel like art is such an individual thing, and there's
Yeah.
no two artists who think alike.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I mean, you put it the best way. To me, think like an artist just means, first of all, to keep an open mind. Like inspiration truly is everywhere, and you can find inspiration in anything. And I think when we say think like an artist, it also means, what is an artist? What is art? Art is self-expression, and to be an artist is to express yourself. So to think individually, to think about the things that you like and the things that inspire you. So I truly draw inspiration from the things that really inspire me. And it's bringing your own perspective on that. Like the ideas that I bring forth in breaking, a lot of other people might not bring forward because they don't think the way that I do. They don't like the things that I like. Like I draw inspiration from the video games I play, from the animes that I watch growing up and that I watch now. More recently, I've been watching a lot of other sports, just like random clips and stuff, and I'll try to draw inspiration from those different movements. Like I have a movement that's called swimming that I invented from watching swimmers do a front stroke, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try that on the floor. So to think like an artist just means to bring your own unique perspective on it, and that's just the way you view life, the things that you like, the things that you don't like, and also the energies. Like I think this is like a weird thing to conceptualize, but a lot of the times when I'm in the studio, it's the energy that I'm feeling. Sometimes I'm feeling not so great, and that energy will be transferred to the floor when I'm dancing in a positive way. Or sometimes just it means that I'm lacking a little bit of energy today and I go a little bit slower at practice, but that does not make the practice worse. And I think that's where the artistic realm comes in, is as like an athlete, you might think that you have to push through everything.
Yeah.
But for us as breakers, because we are a combination of an athlete as well as an artist, it's that combination of, yes, there are times that I can push myself, but there are times that I have to step back physically and let the artistic side take over. And that means going a little bit slower. Maybe the practice, I'm not like pushing myself in terms of my heart rate or physically, but I'm creatively exploring different realms and uncomfortable realms. And that means sometimes when I'm in training, I'm very uncomfortable, right? Because I'm trying to explore movements that I haven't explored before. I'm trying to do things that feel a little bit weird, but it's trying to learn to also be uncomfortable and comfortable within that realm as well. So it's that combination of things. And sometimes I go and I just push myself physically. I want to see how much I can do in a short period of time, how explosive I can be. And it's that combination of two and going back and forth and being able to jump back and forth that makes breaking super interesting and fun for me.
You said sometimes I let the artistic side take over. That sounds spiritual even.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of, especially with something like breaking, because of course we're a dance, and so a lot of times the music is just playing and I just want the music to take over. So a lot of times it's just letting go. It's just letting go, listening to the music, seeing how you feel, how your body feels, how you want to react to it. And it is a very spiritual experience. I think it's something that is in breaking, but is in a lot of things, is like that flow state. And that's something that people talk about a
Mm.
lot, is just naturally letting yourself body let go, and just kind of getting into the rhythm of it and allowing, yeah, just to be free, and let your mind go, and let your body take over and let it kind of guide you through the music.
One thing that just popped in my head too, speaking about the spiritual and this artistic part, there's this huge prejudice about art and artists, and
Mm-hmm.
it's that you can't make money off of art. And I
Mm-hmm.
just, and I just wondered, when did you realize that breaking could become a career for you? Because you actually made the decision to drop out of school, right? And give breaking a real shot, especially after competing in the Red Bull BC One World Finals.
Yes, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there is that conception, the idea of like the broke artist. I do think like it is
Kinda.
kind of true though, because in a lot of senses,
Mm.
for a lot of people, especially when you're starting out, I think less so now in the world that we live in today, with access to social media, and the platforms to be able to showcase your art on bigger platforms. But I think breaking was also, and still is, one of those disciplines that is hard to make a living out of, to do it professionally. I think we are in a better place now, and it's growing, and getting bigger than ever. And I love being able to see that. I think it sucks that people spend so much time and energy, and dedicate their lives to this craft, and they still have to work on other jobs because they can't make ends meet. And I know a lot of people like that. Again, things have changed and things are changing, which are fantastic. But for myself personally, it was around, I believe, I want to say it was 2017. I finished high school. I took a gap year. I was dancing for a little bit. And actually, during my gap year, I kind of realized that I don't know if I could do this. So I went to Korea for a few months, and I decided. So after I graduated high school, I took a gap year. I went to Korea for a few months, and I wanted to pursue dance. And when I was in Korea, I kind of recognized that I don't know if I can do this. Like, I don't think I'm that good. There's so many other people that were better than me. I came home pretty quickly after that. I was working for a little bit, and at the time, I was in a pretty low state mentally, of recognizing that like I've dedicated a lot of time to this already, but I don't know if this is for me, in terms of I don't think I'm talented enough. I don't think I'm good enough. But at the same time, it's what I love to do. So I kept practicing, I kept dancing, but I thought maybe I don't know if this is for me. As well as at the time, there was pressure from family members, from my parents, for me to go to school, to go to university, to do the traditional path. And so at the time, I caved in. I went to university for one semester, and I remember that just being like the most miserable time of my life. Mentally, I was struggling a lot, just like not wanting to be at school, but also feeling like I wasn't good enough as a dancer to kind of make it. But I kept dancing, and I kept going to school. And I was miserable when I was in school, but I enjoyed dancing a lot. And it was still something that I enjoyed. And then Rebel BC1 was happening. There was actually, it was the LA Cypher. So in Los Angeles, they had a qualification event. And I just kind of made the decision at the time, just because I was in a place where like I didn't know what to do. And I said, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to train really hard for this event, and I'm going to go. And I decided if I win the event, then I would drop out of school and like give this dance thing a shot and do the best that I could. And then if I lose, I wouldn't quit dancing, but I would take a step back and just kind of focus on my school, get my life sorted out, and dance on the side, and get a job or whatever. So I trained really hard for the event, paid my way there, stayed with a friend in LA. I think, yeah, shout out to Ryan for letting me stay at his place. And then, yeah, I was a Canadian kid who actually technically wasn't allowed to actually enter the event. And I think there were problems after that, because you had to be a US citizen. But the
Oopsie.
organizer knew who I was. And I think I was just like, I was a young kid at the time. I wasn't anybody that was super known or anything. I was starting to come up a little bit, so some people knew who I was, but I wasn't like well known or by any means. And there was a lot of good people at that event, and so I didn't think they thought I was gonna win. So they were just like, "Let the kid enter, whatever." He came all the way from Canada, so I entered the event and I ended up winning the event. I took out some people that were very well known at the time in the competitive scene, and I remember going to the World Finals that year, and I had to actually represent the USA because they logistically they're like, you won the USA qualifier, you weren't supposed to even be able to enter.
You're one of
So
them
I had to
now.
represent, yeah, I had to enter the USA as a United States representative that year. But yeah, I won that event, came home, and I told myself, okay, I would commit to this dance. So I told my parents, hey, like, I know that you want me to go to school, but like, I really, really want to try this dance thing. Just give me kind of a few years to show you that I can do it. And they're like, okay, fine. So I dropped out of school and just kind of focused on dance. But it still wasn't easy. Like, I still struggled a lot, especially mentally, just thinking like, I don't know if I can do this. And it was very much a daily struggle for many years.
Let's dig into that because that struck me as you started the whole answer right there. What made you think that you weren't cut out for this?
I mean, it was a combination of things. I think even now and from an early age, I always had a lot of like negative self-talk in my head. And that was something that I've struggled with my whole life. But I think it was, first of all, recognizing that the breaking scene and industry is very, very competitive and very difficult. At the time when I was coming up, and again, it's different now, which is great to see, but it really was only the top 1% that could make a living off of this. And oftentimes the way we saw it and the way I saw it was like Red Bull athletes, because Red Bull was and still is the premier sponsor in breaking. And, you know, I remember growing up watching YouTube videos of the Red Bull BC1 All-Stars and just dreaming about being there one day because they were living the life. They were traveling the world. They were sharing with people, doing workshops, sharing with different communities, competing. They were the best of the best, but they were kind of seen as the only ones competitively who could make a living off of breaking. And so that felt so far away. And so at the time I was like, there's no way I can make it. I'm a kid from Canada. No one's ever done it from Canada, has made it that far, has even competed in the world finals of the Rebel BC1 World Finals. And so at the time it was kind of unheard of and not something that I ever thought that I could do. I was getting better at the time. I was good for my age. I was good for my country, but then I had not competed much worldwide. And so after winning that LA event was when I started getting invitations worldwide and competing a little bit more. But it took a long time for that confidence to come up, for me to gain any real confidence. And it took a long time to gain that momentum. It took years and years and years. And it was really only after COVID that I really started competing at the highest level. But yeah, it was a struggle, both mentally, physically, but yeah, it kind of day in, day out.
Speaking or catching up on that point of negative self-talk and I'm gonna call it imposter syndrome self-talk kind of. How did you find this switch? How did you get out of that? Because I personally can be so incredibly harsh on myself too. And it's, you know, like this negative spiral, and sometimes it's just impossible to get out of there.
Definitely. Honestly, it's still something that I struggle with today, but I think it's, to be completely honest, it wasn't like the most glamorous or like one thing that changed anything. I think over time I just got tired of it. I just realized like I gotta live with myself my whole life, and I gotta live with these thoughts. And at one point, I think if I envision it as like two people and one person is constantly nagging your ear, I was just like, can you stop? Like, this is annoying and I'm tired of this and I'm tired of living this way. And I think it was a combination of things, though. I was very fortunate enough to have good people around me. There's a lot of external validation, which I know people say like you shouldn't rely on external validation, but it was also nice to hear people being like, you're really good, you can do this. Like, and so I had a lot of that. I did also have a lot of people telling me I couldn't do this, that you should get a job, you should do a regular thing. So there was a combination of both, but it was recognizing too, again, that like I have to live with these thoughts all the time. But I think at one point it just like kept building up, and I don't want to say I snapped, but I just decided I don't really care anymore, because like I'm going to do it anyways. Like I was dancing anyways, even at my lowest points, I was still dancing. And so I recognized that I was going to do this anyways. I am going to do this anyways. So you might as well commit 100% physically, time-wise, and mentally, because like I'm gonna do it anyways. And again, it's something that I still struggle with today. I go back and forth a lot. There are some times that I feel supremely confident in competition, and there are some times that I still feel like, why am I here? I don't deserve to be here. I can't do this. And that's something that I'm still fighting and working on today. And it's a constant battle. I don't think it's like a thing that like suddenly I don't have it anymore. I think there are times that it goes away, and there are times that it's still there. I have ways that helps that work for me. I think preparation is really important. The more I train, the more I prepare before an event, the more confident I feel going into an event. And then I have little strategies, like for myself personally, like social media makes me really anxious. Like being on Instagram and seeing other people training, even if I have a good training day and I see other people training, immediately I'm like, well, I got to train more now because this person's doing crazy moves. This person's, yeah, I'm constantly comparing. So oftentimes before a competition, I'm off social media. I find journaling for me really helps, just putting my thoughts on paper and then like having an empty mind going in. And as cheesy as it sounds, it's just gratitude and just like being thankful for where I am, especially now. Like, again, when I was a kid, I didn't think I'd be where I am now. I only dreamed of being a Red Bull athlete, of becoming one of the All-Stars. And so being where I am now in life, it's also just like kind of going into every event with gratitude of just being like, I'm thankful to be here. And I want to have a good time because I spent a lot of my early years in my career just struggling mentally. And I kind of decided later on that I just want to enjoy it now. I want to enjoy every moment and I want to enjoy every competition. And so that flip in mindset happened kind of gradually over time. It wasn't a one-time thing that suddenly flipped it, but I think over time it was just like I'm tired of thinking this way and I want to change. And so it's still something I'm working on, but it's something that has been getting better, I would say, over the last few years.
So interesting to hear how it's like or it was a conscious decision that you took not to like talk to yourself like that anymore. And it's funny because I, briefly screen or surf through your YouTube videos and I found it so like striking how positively, how kind you were speaking to yourself. This active deed of being positive and kind to yourself.
Yeah, I think that's something that I have to do because, again, it's normal for me to have a lot of negative internal dialogue. And so to verbalize it outwardly as well as inwardly, just to verbalize that positivity and to talk about it and to even just say that I'm grateful for things, I think often can help switch the mind to be like, I am grateful. I do appreciate these things. And it's easy for me to forget. Like when I'm on the road, when I'm traveling and we're in competition and those stress factors come in and I'm starting to have the negative internal dialogue, oftentimes it's just like stepping away a little bit, almost like visually it's like me trying to step outside of my body and recognize my surroundings, where I am in the world, who I'm with, the opportunity to be there, and then just recognizing, oh, I'm just happy to be here still. Like even maybe I might not perform well today, but just recognizing that I'm grateful to be here. I will do my best, but like that's all I can do. And so it's just, yeah, trying to flip the switch and find what kind of works for you.
Those are so many tools. You mentioned stepping out of yourself, journaling, the positive self-talk. Are all those tools that you came up with yourself, or did you work with someone, or did you have someone who would help you establish these for you?
Not necessarily. I don't think I had anyone. It was oftentimes just seeing different videos on YouTube and seeking advice from podcasts, like listening to a lot of podcasts and just experimentation. I think that's the most important thing, is trying different things and seeing what works for you, because some things worked for me, some things didn't. And I kept the things that I felt like worked really well. Like when I started journaling and then journaling on the day of a competition, I realized like for me, it felt like a way to put my thoughts onto the paper, and they're on the paper and gone now. So whether it's negative, whether it's positive, it's all there. And then my mind feels more clear kind of going into the competition and realizing, oh, that works for me. That's something I'll try to keep doing, maybe on a daily basis or just like right before competition. And as I did more and more of that, it worked. So I kept rolling with it, kept trying to do it. But I do want to emphasize that things are never perfect. Like, as much routine you can have, you might have an off day. But also for me, it was recognizing that is also okay. I think for the longest time, I thought like one off day would ruin my career. And that was something I had to learn over a long period of time, of recognizing it's okay, because I've had a lot of bad days and I'm still here and I'm still performing at the highest level, and I'm still competing against and with some of the best. And I'll continue doing that for as long as I can. But, recognizing that one bad performance doesn't mean the end of your career and that you can always bounce back. And that's something that I realized, and it also helped me kind of calm myself down and care almost a little bit less. And as I cared less, I was able to focus on just enjoying it more, and that has been working for me really well.
Enjoying it more is a very important thing when thinking about this high performance environment that you're in. And doing my little research here, I found out that you work out or practice for about 25 hours per week. how does the mental part come into there? Maybe you can just share with us in general what the routine includes for you, because, we just touched before on the balance between the creativity part, the physical part. How can we imagine your workout to give you what you need?
Yeah, definitely. I think everything that I do is a combination of mental and physical training. So even when I'm in the gym, working with my trainer or in the gym myself, obviously that is inherently physical, but there's a huge mental component to working out. It's pushing past what you think you can do in every little moment. And sometimes it's like the distractions, avoiding distractions. Like when I'm in my gym, I don't let myself go on my phone anymore. I'll play my music and then I put my phone away, because the moment I'm
Wow.
on my phone, then I'm
I can't
distracted,
do
and then
that.
I'll scroll
Yeah.
Instagram, and then your breaks are longer. So it's trying to be focused, if it's for the hour at the gym, to be focused entirely at that time for the hour. It's also like in the very minute small details in the ways, like again using the gym as an example, when you're doing a rep whatever exercises, it's trying to be aware of the form, it's being aware of your entire body, and focusing on that. And those little tools are what help me in competition as well, to be able to focus, to not get distracted. Like those little things that you do daily, for me, the same thing applies when I'm in practice. I try to be off my phone. Sometimes I cave, sometimes I go on my phone, but I try to be off my phone entirely, so that for the 2-3 hours, maybe 4 hours that I'm in my studio, that I'm completely focused and that I'm in the zone. And that equates to, when I'm in competition, to be able to be focused so that my mind doesn't wander. And I practice every single time too. If I'm like practicing in the studio, if my mind starts going negative, and it happens a lot, like I'm training and I'm like, I don't feel good today, to try to switch it. Doesn't matter. Perform. Doesn't matter. Go out, dance. Doesn't matter. Flip the switch. And to remind yourself of that every time that negative self, at least for myself, the negative self-talk comes in, or I'm just not feeling great, to recognize, okay, what if this was the performance day? What if you are at the biggest event in the world right now? What if you are at BC1 and you have to perform? This is your round. Like, what are you going to do? You have to do it anyways, right? So to try to flip that switch and to constantly do it in preparation. So when it comes to the competition day, ideally you're in the best shape, but oftentimes we're not in the best shape when you're competing. And I think I learned also over time, that's what separates the champions from the rest, is the people that are able to perform even when they're not feeling the best, but still make it look like that they're performing at their best. But those comes from those minute details in training, in preparation. And I do it in every way that I can. And again, it goes back and forth. Sometimes I fail, sometimes I do well, but I try to overall do it as much as possible. Like even if I'm shooting content, like sometimes we'll have to wake up at 5 a.m. for a shoot, and I go and I decide, okay, this is your competition round. Like that's just the mental thinking I have. What if you had to compete right now? Like give it your best kind of thing, you know? And so to be able to turn on at any time and be able to perform at any time. So those are like the little techniques that I use in life. It's not fun. It's hard, but
Hmm.
it's a good way for me to kind of, especially in preparation for a competition or a big event, to kind of mentally prepare as well.
Yeah, that's crazy. I wish I could do that. Gotta work on that. But as you said, just like, telling yourself, you gotta be ready now. I heard you say somewhere that your motto is be ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yeah,
Doesn't that
exactly.
add a
It's
lot
like,
of pressure as well?
yeah, the motto is stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I don't know who said it first. I'm not the first one to say it, but I remember hearing that and being like, I
It's
love
yours
that
now.
saying. I have taken it. I will take it. I don't think it really adds pressure. I think of it almost as a game. Like I love the gamification of everything. I grew up playing a lot of video games, of watching a lot of anime, and so for me, the gamification of life, the gamification of sport, of breaking, of art, of culture, like is super fun to me. It doesn't really add stress. It's just like I see it as a game. Like, can I be ready right now in this very moment? Like, can I do what I need to do even if I don't want to do it? And a lot of times I can't do it. But in my head, I don't stress too much about like, I messed up or I failed. It's just like I tried. That's the viewpoint that I have. I tried. Didn't succeed today. Maybe I'll try it again tomorrow. There's always another opportunity to test that resolve. So it doesn't mean that like I will be able to perform at 100% every time. It just means in that moment, can I do the best that I possibly can? But that motto for me just allows me to be ready at all times, especially with the schedule that I have now. I don't get to train as much as I would like, and sometimes that I did before. But it's to train as much as I can to stay ready, even while I'm on the road, right before a competition, or I'm shooting content, or I'm traveling for other work. to constantly kind of stay ready.
You mentioned a couple of times now that obviously it's your goal to always perform at your best. And you also use the word succeed right there. And I wondered, what does that even mean for you? Because, you're not dancing a choreography. Of course, you're probably planning pieces and bits. But how do you get your perfect performance together? How much is prepared? How much is pre-planned? And how much is flow and, just being in the moment and being creative?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like success within the realm of performance and dance. For myself, the perfect picture would be all freestyle. Like you're just completely in the moment, and it's almost like you're translating the music. Like you are the music, but you have a combination of being able to be in the moment, but still showcasing your signatures, everything on timing with the music, and everything just flowing super naturally. And it's a hard thing to describe. There have only been a couple times that I've ever been able to do it in competition, and it's super rare. And oftentimes those times is when something spontaneous happens too, because you're in the moment, you're freestyling. Like there are times when, and these are like the magic moments that you kind of search for, and what I think most dancers, if not all dancers, search for is this magic moment where in that moment of competition, in that moment, you kind of almost create something on stage or in that competition atmosphere that you've never done before or haven't done as well before. And that's only happened a couple times for me. But those are the things we seek, and that is the performance you're looking for. And to do that, again, it's preparation. Like for me, when I'm breaking, I do have moves in mind that I want to do, but I allow myself to freestyle and let the music take over. So if the music guides me one way, if my body in that moment decides to go that way, I let it go. I'm not like I have to go back because I had this planned. I have like a few ideas in my head, but as I'm moving, if I'm like, oh, this feels good, I let it happen. And then if I can come back to something that I want to do, or I oftentimes will just grasp the first idea in my head. So I very much see it as like, if I'm sitting down, there's a bunch of like floating images or words that are kind of floating around, and those are like my moves or different moves. And in my head, as I'm walking, like as I'm going, the first thing that comes close, I grab it and then I just throw it out. And that's oftentimes how I visualize my breaking now. And it's often to the music. So if the music's going, this word is coming, I'm like, oh, this will match well, I'll put it along and then go again. It's like constructing a sentence as you go. It's the same thing as talking. Like as you're talking, you figure things out. And then as you're talking, you're like, oh no, this idea will insert nicely into this next sentence or whatever. It's the same thing. Like the way you talk, the way I dance is very similar. I'm free flowing. I'm allowing my thoughts to come out naturally. And then as I'm talking, oh, a new idea comes out. I want to throw out this idea. Right. And that's how you create that rhythm and flow and make it feel natural and make it feel spontaneous. And also for me, I had to do that because I used to plan a lot more. So I would do what we call more sets and kind of pre-planned stuff. And I recognize when you're competing constantly, you just get so bored of your own moves because you're doing the same thing. And I needed it to be more fun.
Sense of security, though.
Yeah, sure. A sense of security. But for me, like more than anything, I just wanted to have fun, and I was getting bored, like in competition of myself. And I realized if I'm getting bored of myself, other people will get bored of me. And also there's an inherent energy. Like if you're bored of your own moves, the amount of energy you want to put in your moves is significantly less. Whereas now, as I'm freestyling, I'm excited to do these moves because it's coming up in different orders. It's coming up in spontaneous ways. Even if every competition I'm doing the same or similar movements, the way I put those and string those together is adaptive based on the competition that I'm in, based on the music that's playing, based on whatever scenario. I oftentimes will respond to the opponent too. And it's like I approach it in a very playful way. If the opponent does something that I have something similar or that I feel that I can one up, I'm going to go and try it. And that kind of looseness, that freedom allows me to often perform better. It's risky because sometimes I can mess up, but I recognize that that risk is what I need to perform well and also kind of have fun being able to consistently perform at a high level.
What about including the audience at a competition? Because I can imagine, obviously, this can give so much energy and this can be such a cool, move and show how your character really works. And I don't know, maybe you could be mischievous and whatever, but at the same time, focusing on the audience can take you away from your center and your flow, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a hard balance to find because oftentimes we can cater to the audience, like, and that's happened to me where like you hear the audience cheering and you're like, okay, I want to do another big move, so they keep cheering or whatever. But it really is, and over time I've learned about yourself because oftentimes in breaking too, the audience, especially people who have never seen breaking or haven't seen breaking much, will cheer for certain things that they find impressive, but within the realm of breaking isn't necessarily impressive. A lot of times, like the most physically impressive things, people spinning on their heads, doing these crazy movements, aren't the things that end up winning competition because originality, individuality, character, style is so emphasized in breaking, and so really for me, it's to try to ignore the audience. Like I'll interact with them once in a while. I'll play with the audience and we do feed off their energy. If they're cheering, it gives you encouragement and want to do more. But for the most part, you want to be focusing on yourself and your dance because it's about expressing yourself and showcasing your movements on the floor, not necessarily, yes, we are technically performing because we are competing, we're performing in front of an audience, but you're dancing for yourself. So for me, it's a conversation between me and the opponent, and I want that conversation to shine, and it's not necessarily about impressing the people around me.
I also am still thinking about the moment when you said you really like the gamification of it. Maybe you can, just elaborate a little bit more on that, how your craft is comparable to anything like a game.
Yeah, for sure. Like for me, again, like I grew up watching a lot of video game or playing a lot of video games, and watching a lot of anime. So for me, like my life feels like the things that I grew up watching. Like and the thing that excites me and continues to excite me and what I love about breaking is that everyone is so different. It's unlike any other sport, or and what makes it more of an art is that everyone expresses themselves in a different way. You can have two people that compete at the highest level that have competed against each other very, very like many times, but dance completely differently. And you can have one time one person is winning, one time the other person is winning. And that's what makes breaking so beautiful. I see it as like I grew up watching, again, a lot of anime and superhero movies and stuff. I see it like if you compare Batman versus Superman, they're both very strong. They're both very powerful superheroes, but the way they fight is completely different. The moves that they have, the specialties that they have are completely different. But just because Superman is all powerful, Batman can often still beat him because he understands and knows his weaknesses. And so for me, breaking is very similar. As well as the approach for me kind of reminds me of a video game. Like in any kind of classic RPG, as you progress through the game, as you level up and gain more experience points, you can decide what to put in: strength, intelligence, speed, whatever the categories are in the video game. For me, it's the same in breaking. Every day when you go to training, you can decide what you want to put in. I can work on my power. I can work on my stamina. I can work on more creativity, originality. And the more you work on that, that will become a shining factor in your dance. For myself, I was always greedy. I wanted to be the best, or good at everything, but also recognizing that I want to be good at everything and be able to do everything, but still have an emphasis on the creativity and the originality side, because that's what speaks to me. Those are the things that I enjoy doing the most. When I go to training, I don't really like drilling, and I hate running my own moves that I've already done. I always try to search for something new. So that's the thing that I emphasize more, but at the same time, I'll still work on everything else. There was a period, like, for example, during COVID, I was never strong in power moves, which are like flares, air flares, head spins, like the more dynamic movements. And during that COVID time, I just made a decision. I want to work on this more. So I started putting into that skill tree and working on that. And I learned that as you work on that, increasing that physical ability also will exponentially increase your ability to create, because oftentimes you're limited by what you can do physically. I might have some ideas, but recognizing I can't do these ideas physically, so I have to increase that physical ability so that I can actually perform the creative ideas I want to perform. But everything for me is kind of like a video game. Even when I travel, like I like, for me, one of my favorite anime growing up was One Piece, and it's this anime where it's like a pirate crew and you travel around the world, and there are other pirate crews and they're notorious and they have a bounty, and them, like, oh, this person is this person, whatever. And it was the same for me when I went to competitions early on. Like I would go to a competition and be like, yo, that's Victor, that's Lil Zoo, like those guys are crazy, I hope I don't meet them in battle. And then you meet them, and then for me it was like, when you're and this has happened to me in competition oftentimes, where like in that moment you have to step up. In that very moment, like, I don't think I can beat this person, but I have to step up. And sometimes you fail, and sometimes I do step up. And after that battle, it's almost like you level up. And when I go back to training, I feel stronger. I feel more confident, and then I want to keep that momentum going. So, yeah, for me, like, everything in life, but breaking especially is such a fun video game, and I see everything like a video game, and thus the gamification of life.
So wow, that's poetic too, the gamification of life. I really loved how you just described the situation, the competition as the moment where you have to level up. In those moments, and I'm also going back to you throwing Superman and Batman in there. Are you channeling your personal superhero in there, Phil Wizard?
Oh, that's a good question. Not necessarily. Um, I'm channeling me. I don't think I'm my own superhero. There's a lot of people I look up to, but I'm just channeling myself, and I'm channeling the best version that I can put forward for myself. And oftentimes, honestly, it was faking it till I made it. Like there were a lot of competitions where I was so nervous that I was shaking backstage, and when I go outside, I put on a smile and I do the best that I can. But sometimes faking that helped me because it allowed me to, yeah, almost like have a second persona. It's still me, but it was the me that I wanted to be, not necessarily the me that I felt like in that moment, but the me that I wanted to present. And eventually it allowed me to climb up to the point where like that did become me. I was able to climb to the point where I did become the person that I wanted to be, and the person that I wanted to show for other people in competition.
Why did you choose the name Wizard? I mean, speaking of superheroes and crazy skills here, it does catch one's attention.
Yeah, the name actually came from my very first crew. So my very first crew was called the Wizards Crew, and when I was competing, people would say like Phil representing or from the Wizards Crew, and it actually just naturally got shortened to Phil Wizard. So people just kept calling me Phil Wizard, Phil from the Wizards Crew, Phil from the Wizards Crew, and then it became Phil Wizard. So it was just a natural progression, and that often happens for a lot of people where your name is kind of given to you by your friends, your peers, or the community. Some people come up with their own names, but a lot of times like your name is given to you as well.
Being part of a crew is a huge part in breaking as well. You've experienced both. What are the pros and cons for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, breaking comes from crew culture. It comes from like growing up with people and dancing with people around you and building together. And I've did that as a kid, and the sometimes crews die out. Like Wizards was my very first crew, and I'm happy it's in my name because it's kind of a homage to how I started. But at the same
Will
time,
never
that
die
crew,
out.
yeah, isn't really around anymore in terms of the people that I hang out with, the people that were in that crew. I don't train with them anymore. I don't really see them anymore because, life takes its turns. I kept dancing. A lot of them didn't want to compete at that level or didn't put the time and effort to try to make it there. So it's just people divulge in different paths. But the crew element is super important. Yes, in a lot of competitions like Rebel BC1, it is a one-on-one battle, but there's 2-on-2s, there's 3-on-3s, there's big crew battles, and that can completely change your dynamic. Oftentimes, the way you break is very much influenced by the people around you, by your crew, by your peers, because you're all training together. That environment is super important. I think both are very, very important because I think it's important as a dancer, as an artist, and an athlete to be able to do it by yourself, to be alone with your art, to be able to build by yourself. But also it's important to get the insight of other people and to develop with other people because that is motivating, that can inspire you and push you as well. But I think the combination of both and having both is super important. And I've been fortunate enough to have both. There are a lot of times where I want to be in the studio alone because I want to push myself and see where I go by myself. And then there are times where like I just want to vibe and dance with other people. As well, same thing as competing as well is the same thing. Like I prefer to compete with other people because it's more fun. Like it's more fun to win with your people, to win with your boys, than it is to win by yourself. But at the same time, the individual competition is really a test of yourself, of pushing yourself both mentally and physically. So both are extremely important.
And I mean, you're still kind of part of a crew, right? Because since 2022, you're a member of the Rebel BC1 All Stars, and that's definitely a crew of some of the best breakers in the world right now. What does this crew give you? What does it mean to you to be part of this special union there?
Yeah, definitely. So I was part of the Wizards, was my first crew. I'm part of another crew called the United Rivals, which are kind of my family and friends. And then and then the Rebel BC1 All Stars, as you mentioned as well. This is amazing. Like for me, honestly, it was a dream. Like when I watched, like my dream was to become a Rebel BC1 All Star, to become a sponsored Rebel dancer, because it was seen as the best of the best. And I think especially now we're very fortunate that like all of us are really close, especially the newer generation guys. Like my best friend is Lil Zoop. Like he's one of my closest friends and he's a Rebel Red Bull BC1 All-Star. So is Sunny, so is Lee, Victor, you know, a lot of the newer generation guys especially, like we're all really, really good friends as well. So it does feel like a real crew, but you also get to compete with, to train with, and build with the best dancers in the world. And that's like something that I truly only ever dreamed of. And so these are also like the people that I mentioned, the names that I mentioned are people that I grew up watching. Like I grew up watching Victor, I grew up watching Sunny, I grew up watching Zoo when I was young, watching them at Red Bull BC1, like being on my couch at 4 a.m. because of the time difference and watching them compete. And now we compete together, we hang out together, and we also, you know, build together, we train together. And so that environment is super important. And I'm very grateful for Red Bull to have a team like this, because it allows us to grow together. Not just as like a team under the brand of Red Bull, but as individuals and kind of for me, a family.
And I mean, speaking of being part of a crew or part of something bigger, let's have a look at the situation where you had the privilege of carrying the Canadian flag at the Pan American Games closing ceremony last year, actually, after the first ever breaking title. Maybe you can share with us what that meant to you and what that situation was like.
That meant a lot. Like, you know, I was born and raised in Canada. I come from a Korean background. My family's from Korea, but I was born and raised in Canada, and I grew up here. And this is the country that for me, that I grew up dancing in, that, you know, I spent my childhood in, obviously, and I have a lot of love for the country that I'm in. And that moment, it was after I won the Pan American Games, and then they asked me to be the flag bearer. It was a very emotional moment for me. I mean, it was just, there was a lot going on. I had just qualified for the games. I had won this event, and then they asked me to be flag bearer. So it was just a lot of emotions going on. I remember crying when they did ask me. And I just remember specifically just having this idea of like, in my head, I was like, wow, like I grew up in Canada. I'm very proud to be Canadian, but it was the first time that I felt like it was reciprocated. Like, Canada is now proud of me, you know? So it's not like, and I've joked around with my family about this, where it's like, my family immigrated from Korea to come here to give myself and my brothers a different life. And we joked around, for this family specifically, we're like, Canada made a good investment, because now one of them is representing at the games and representing this country. So yeah, it was a very emotional and kind of special moment for me, for sure.
Oh man, I really love that. I can really feel the appreciation there from both sides, I guess. That's so cool. Man, and we're slowly but surely coming to the end of this very cool episode. Thank you so much for being so open. And just as like a closing statement of maybe hope and motivation for not only young dancers listening, but maybe, you know, you can share a bit of motivation, maybe, or like a little pep talk for them to keep investing in a positive mindset, that the way you are, and maybe catch on your motto, kind of, that is promoting the development and cultivating your most authentic self through your craft.
I think, I don't know, as cheesy as it sounds, like everything you kind of hear people say is very, very true, but recognizing that oftentimes the answer is in the most simplest things. The thing that got me here today is consistency. Through it all, through the ups, through the downs, like I was very consistent in my craft, and I kept training. And I did it not because, yes, I had goals. Yes, there were certain things that I did and wanted to do. But it was because I loved what I did. And as cheesy as that is, like, again, the answer is always in the simplest things. Why are you doing this? Like, what is your why? For me, I had goals. Again, I wanted to be an all-star. I wanted to be able to financially sustain myself with this. I wanted to compete at the highest level. But at the same time, that was not my why. These were just external factors that I was aiming for. My why was I love to dance. My favorite thing to do back then and still today is to go to the studio every day and dance. And so that is my why, and that why is what got me to where I am today. So it is truly to find your why. Like, what is the reason you're doing this? What is the thing that will sustain you regardless of the end result? And again, it's cheesy, but it's the journey. Like, it is the journey and the thing that will sustain you most through those ups and downs, through the highs and lows. Without any of this, I'd still be dancing, because that's what I like to do. And so you need to find the why of what you do. And I was very lucky, and I realized that I found that pretty early on, and that sustained me through it all. And I kind of blinked one day and realized, wow, I'm living my dream now. But it was because I just love to go to the studio every day. It doesn't mean that every day was good. I had bad days. I have a lot of bad days. I have bad months. I have bad years. I have times where I go to the studio every day and I don't want to be there. But I realized through it all, though, overall, it's what I love to do the most. And sometimes it's stepping away. I've had times where I took days off or weeks off, and then I come back and I realize again, this is why I do what I do. This is why I love what I do. And that, again, remotivates me and sustains me. So you just have to find your why, the purpose of like, what do you really, and it's the simple answer of like, what do you enjoy doing overall? Doesn't mean you have to enjoy it all the time. There are sometimes bad days, sometimes good days. But overall, when you come back, you're like, I really, really love to do this. And I can see myself doing this for a very long time or the rest of your life. And find that. And I think more than anything, that will sustain you. Like through it all, if I had to work a job, I would have worked a job. I'm very lucky that this is my job now and what I get to do. But if I had to work another job, I'd still be dancing. And so the why is not rooted in anything else. It's not rooted in certain goals. It's just the day-to-day of this is what I enjoy doing. So I think it's important to find that.
Phil, thank you so much. This was so much fun. A really great interview. And I mean, I'm definitely hyped right now. Your energy is definitely infectious. We're crossing our fingers for you for the future. All the best. And I hope that you will keep dancing forever.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. Nice to talk to you, Lisa.
Wow, Phil is so cool, isn't he? I really appreciated how he opened up about his mental struggles and the battle between his artistic and his athletic side. We definitely wish him well for the future. I'll be back on Thursday with York to see what we can learn from Phil and break down, no pun intended, what we can apply to our own lives. Guys, and please do get in touch with us and share how the podcast has been helping or affecting your life, just like Kai did. Kai referred to the journaling insights from Saya and York that were extremely helpful to him, and he said, I never realized why pen and paper journaling is so much better than digital, but makes so much sense. Gonna try and do it daily again like I used to. Kai, this is such great feedback. Thank you so much for reaching out and sharing this with us, and glad this has been helpful for you. And guys, you can reach out just like Kai did. Please leave a review or a comment wherever you're listening or watching, or shoot us an email on mindsetwin@redbull.com. Also, please make sure to hit follow or subscribe, and do check out the full video on our new Mindset Win YouTube channel. Would mean the world. Stay with us and see you back on Thursday.